Hey everybody, Arnaldo here, broadcasting from Fidelio's Frequency. Welcome to my channel. The moment has come to reveal my favorite albums of 2024. I've selected 20 albums and I've added 4 additional, let's call them bubbling under or notable mentions, in addition to the 20 that I've selected to round off the count to 24, aligned with the year 2024. So this by no means is a ranking based on a critical review. These are just my preferences. These are the things that I listen to the most. These are the albums that I connected with throughout the year. So one of the first of the 4 honorable mentions, we have Bleachers, Jack Antonoff's band. Jack Antonoff, if many of you don't know, is the main collaborator, songwriter, producer of Lana Del Rey, as well as Taylor Swift. But it doesn't sound like either one of them, except for maybe one song, Call Me After Midnight, which to me seems like it's an outtake from a Taylor Swift album, and Alma Mater, which is a song written with Lana Del Rey, which features also vocals with Lana Del Rey. But apart from that, this is an album of rock and roll, almost a tribute to Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. That's what it sounds like a lot, and filled with almost, some people have called them turnpike anthems to reflect the New Jersey rock heritage scene. And very enjoyable album. I really liked it. I was very surprised when I listened to it. So Bleachers, the self-titled album, Bleachers. Second honorable mention is an album that took me a while to warm up to. I didn't speak about this in prior videos, but I'd like to highlight it now. I really enjoyed it after I purchased a physical copy of David Gilmour's 5th solo album. I actually prefer the rear shot, as I wish they would have used this as the front cover. Beautiful picture by Anton Corbijn. But Lucky and Strange is the 5th album by David Gilmour. Just hearing him play the guitar, for me, it makes the entire album. Some really good songs. There's one cover song by the Montgolfier brothers, which is actually sung by his daughter. But throughout, you have that classic guitar sound. It is modernized, and the producer here, Charlie Andrew, helped him modernize a little bit his sound, where it doesn't sound always like classic Pink Floyd, but it does bring his music up to 2024. Hopefully we'll get more solo outings from David Gilmour before he retires, but Strange, Lucky and Strange, another bubbling under or notable mention for me in 2024. Third honorable mention, and this is an album that I spoke about in one of my earlier videos, the band, English band, Elbow. They have been making music for 20 years. This is their 10th album, and I lost track of them in the last couple of years over the last couple of releases. But when this album came out and I streamed it, it reminded me of what they do best and what I love about their music, alternative music. His voice is very reminiscent of Peter Gabriel, but on this album there are a little bit more darker tones, a lot of African polyrhythms. Some of my favorite songs, actually the opener, Things I've Been Telling Myself for Years, but overall solid release. If you don't know Elbow, you should give them a spin. This is actually probably one of their best albums, along with probably their debut album and maybe the second one. We're going back 20 years now, but Elbow, audio vertigo. Fourth and final honorable mention. This one almost made it into my top 20 of 2024. Marley Monroe, also known as Lady Blackbird. This is her 2nd album. Her first one came out in, I think, around 4 or 5 years ago. It was called Black Acid Soul, but it was more jazz influenced. This one, by the name Slang Spirituals, is more soul influenced. Soul from more like the 70s, sometimes gospel backing vocals, and almost all entirely self-composed, except for one cover version, which is When the Game is Played on You. So honorable mention, let's call it number 21, Lady Blackbird, Slang, Spirituals. And now the top 20. Coming in at number 20, an album that wasn't even announced. It was given away for free at the beginning of August in the form of a test pressing to whoever made a purchase at Third Man record stores. You probably know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Jack White and his 6th solo album, unannounced, called No Name. Probably one of my favorite Jack White's album in years. Going back a little bit more to his roots, the sound, the attitude almost, from the White Stripes, back to basics, not too many arrangements, not straying far from his original musical output, which was garage or blues, garage blues or garage rock, lo-fi, and without too many arrangements, maybe just a little bit of Hammond organ or piano, but basically it's just guitar, bass, drums, great lineup, great songs. Some of my favorite, Tonight was a long time ago, What's the Rumpus, and It's Hard on Rats, or It's Rough on Rats. So Jack White, No Name at number 20. Number 19 is an album by an artist that I've come to appreciate more as a solo artist than when he was part of his original band called The Czars. And I'm talking about John Grant. I think this is his 6th solo album. It's called The Art of the Lie. Amazing songwriting as usual. Beautiful voice. John Grant has this baritone, very warm, just amazing vocalist. Blending on this album more electro-funk moments, like in It's a Bitch, Meek AF, or I think the other song is called All That School for Nothing. And there are a lot of moments where he reminisces a lot of his childhood memories. And in that case, he becomes a bit more moody and more confessional. Beautiful, almost heartbreaking songs when he talks about his parents. There's a song called Father, another one called Mother and Son, and another one called Daddy. Beautiful album. It took me a while to get into. I am a fan of John Grant, but at first when I listened to it, it didn't grab me immediately, but it finally sunk in. The Art of the Lie at number 19 by John Grant. At number 8, an album by an artist that I was totally unfamiliar with until I read a glowing review of this album on Mojo Magazine. And the album is Here in the Pitch, and the artist is Jessica Pratt. Some people have likened her to maybe psychedelic folk. I hear more of 60s style pop, crooner voice, drenched in reverb, very ethereal, very dreamy, almost cloudy, atmospheres that remind me a little bit of Scott Walker, sometimes Dusty Springfield, especially in the opening track, Life Is, has this beautiful string arrangement. An evening album for me, at least. Very, sometimes haunting, but definitely dreamy, ethereal, cloudy. That's how actually she describes it. So 18 is the album Here in the Pitch by Jessica Pratt. The album at number 17 was a big surprise for me in the sense that the last 2 albums by this group lacked a little bit of inspiration. They really missed the mark. They were sounding pretty much the same, a little uninspired. But when I heard this the day of release and I streamed it, I was blown away. I returned to form for the Black Keys. The name of the album is Ohio Players. Produced, co-written almost entirely with Beck, and except for 3 songs in which they feature and they reached out to and co-wrote with Noel Gallagher. As a matter of fact, as I was listening to On the Game, I immediately picked up the resemblance with Oasis, only to find out in the credits that Noel Gallagher co-wrote the song and played on it as well. Garage rock, blues, R&B, very retro sounding. The entire album is really worth listening to. A lot of anthemic type of songs, namely Beautiful People, Only Love Matters, Very Stax influenced type of sound. Amazing record. Great job, guys. The Black Keys, and number 17 with Ohio Players. Number 16, another return to form, in my opinion. And it was an album that was released late in the year, only in November. You'll find some of the albums on my list were actually released in the last 2 months of the year. So number 16, Come Ahead, the album, the 11th album by Primal Scream, British band, led by Bobby Gillespie. This is actually a picture of Bobby's father. Beautiful packaging. If you can see here, it has this spot gloss mirror finish as well as inside, but what's inside the record is even better. This time influenced by gospel, funk, soul, R&B, string arrangements that are absolutely beautiful on this record. Since Screamadelica, they haven't made an album this good, in my opinion. This is our first album in 8 years. It took a while. There were a couple of tragedies in Bobby Gillespie's life. His father passed away. One of the band members passed away. So I could see why it's taken so long. He made a phenomenal album produced by DJ David Holmes. Definitely give this a spin. Many people aren't talking about it when they should be. Number 16 for me, Primal Scream, Come Ahead. So as I mentioned earlier with Jessica Pratt, I think 2024 is the year that I'm catching up on artists that were totally off my radar. Number 15 is another artist. This is her 5th album. She's only 26 years old. I had no idea about her. Again, Mojo Magazine, thank you so much for highlighting this album. Her name is Fay Webster, and the album is called Underdressed at the Symphony. Again, her 5th album. It has various genres on here. You'll have your indie rock moment with Not Kiss, then you'll have an R&B, total R&B jam that opens the album, which is called Thinking About You. Then she has a collaboration called Lego Ring with Lil Yachty, who's her childhood friend. So I was very surprised by her versatility. This is supposedly her breakup album. It has beautiful arrangements, string arrangements, flutes here and there. Definitely worth checking out. Not too many people have talked about it. Fay Webster at number 15 with Underdressed at the Symphony. So earlier when I mentioned 20 albums of 2024, I misspoke because they're actually 21. At number 14, there are 2 albums. This group released 2 albums in 2024. The first one in January called Wall of Eyes, and the second one in October called Cutouts. The band is called The Smile. I couldn't make up my mind which one I wanted to include. I included them both on number 14. Depending on the time of day, on my mood, I prefer one over the other. The first one maybe is the one that sounds less like Radiohead. For those of you who don't know, Johnny Greenwood and Tom York are the members of Radiohead, along with Sons of Kemet drummer. His name is Tom Skinner. They form The Smile. Like I said, the first one released this year is more ethereal, less polyrhythms that you would expect from The Smile or Radiohead. The second one has a bit more of those rhythmic textures throughout. I like them both. Friend of a Friend, floaty, dreamy on my favorite track on, and Tiptoe as well on the Cutouts. And Wall of Eyes has fantastic songs. Maybe it is my preferred one over the 2. Bending Hectic, phenomenal cinematic song about a car falling off an Italian cliff, as well as the other song is Friend of a Friend, Under Our Pillows. 2 great albums. I can't pick one over the other, maybe Wall of Eyes, but there's days that I prefer Cutouts. So both of them at number 14 by The Smile. Coming in at number 13 is a band called the Lemon Twigs. Their album is A Dream Is All We Know. 60s power pop. These two brothers, the Daddario brothers, are incredibly talented. They write, play all the instruments, I believe also self-produced on this album. Again, influences from the Beach Boys, you could hear it in their harmonies, the Beatles, Wings. I think A Dream Is All We Know. It could have been a Wings outtake. It's just 60s power pop, fun, so well produced, so well played. It's like textbook pop songwriting for me. The Lemon Twigs, A Dream Is All We Know. Annie Clark is her real name, coming in at number 12. St. Vincent, All Born Screaming. You have funk, noise rock, lounge, electronica. She's a guitar god. She's shredding whenever you see her live. I've seen her live open for Roxy Music. It was fantastic. Some of the songs on here that I love. One that reminds me as if it was a James Bond theme with all that very cinematic brass arrangement, and that is Violent Times. There is a not so subtle, actually it's very obvious, I think, tribute to David Bowie, a song that's very reminiscent in terms of the lyrical theme, in terms even of the drum pattern, very reminiscent of 5 Years, one of my favorite David Bowie tracks, and that is The Power Is Out. Guest appearances by Kate LeBon, and Dave Grohl. Number 12, St. Vincent, All Born Screaming. The album at number 11 for me was really a hard choice. I really wanted to include it in the top 10. That's how much I love this album, how much I connect with it. I've been following this band since the very beginning in the early 90s, so over 30 years, been a fan always. Maybe the last couple of albums, not as much, that I didn't connect as much with, but this one, really another, I don't want to say return to form because they've always had a very high quality output, but personally, I really enjoy the new album by the Tindersticks. It's called Soft Tissue. Late night music, that's how I like to call it. Very soulful. Stuart Staples is the lead singer and the main composer and the leader of the Tindersticks. Beautiful, soulful baritone. Always amazing string arrangements. Also on this record, to make it even more soulful, more R&B tinged, is backing vocals, very soulful backing vocals. Some people like to compare or assimilate their music to Nick Cave, except for they're not as dramatic and doomy and gloomy, but definitely a very chill, somber atmosphere. The Tindersticks at number 11 with Soft Tissue. And now my 10 favorite albums of the year. 4 of these albums were released in the last 2 months between October and November of 2024. I'm glad these artists released these albums. They really made my year, I have to say. Starting off at number 10 is the 4th album by soul singer-songwriter Michael Kiwanuka. It's called Small Changes. Produced by Inflow, who is the mastermind behind the collective called Salt, as well as returning Danger Mouse, who produced also his 2nd album. Michael Kiwanuka, phenomenal songwriter, beautiful soul singer. If I have to liken or assimilate him to another artist, I would call him almost a male Sade, in the sense that his delivery, the intimacy, the tenderness, the soulfulness of his voice is very similar to me, to Sade. Beautiful songwriting, Low Down, one of my favorite songs on here, Follow Your Dreams, Stay By My Side. Fantastic album called Small Changes by Michael Kiwanuka at number 10. 2024 saw the return of an artist that I've been following for over 40 years. He started making music at the beginning of the early 80s under the name, under his given name, his birth name, Matt Johnson. Later, he called his ensemble and his band also The. And at number 9, we have his first studio album, or song-based studio album, called Ensoulment. You're probably wondering why this looks so small. It is a box set of 3 10-inch records cut at 45 RPM. I don't think I've had a chance to show this on any other of my videos, so we'll just take this opportunity to showcase this really well executed box set with the artwork by Matt Johnson's late brother, Andy Johnson, who pretty much is featured on all of the artwork. His drawings and his paintings are featured across all of the releases. So we have it here, a picture of Matt Johnson on another one, and the final one, also artwork by Andy Johnson, and a booklet with all of the credits and the lyrics and more artwork. The only error that I find and the only flaw on this booklet is because it was the layout was made for both the double album and this box set, they left the breakout as if there were 4 sides instead of 6 as they appear in this box set. Minor flaw, but what counts is the music. And finally, we have new music from The. Although he did release over the course of the last 10 years singles, which are not included in this box set. None of those songs are included. A little bit about Ensoulment and The. Matt Johnson has always been an agitator in terms of his lyrics. He holds up the mirror to like society and lets you see and lets people see what really they don't want to see or don't want to admit. Political, and you can totally tell one of the songs is geared towards the United States. One of my favorite songs on the album, it's called Kissing the Ring of POTUS. Not the current POTUS, probably a previous one and maybe a future one. Let's not get into that. For those of you who are familiar with the work of The, this album is very similar to, I'd say it's a cross between 2 of his best albums, Dusk, which is my favorite The album, as well as Mind Bomb. I call it a nocturnal album. Those cinematic, almost landscapes, night landscapes of a city, the underbelly of a city. I saw him recently with his band at the Beacon Theater on tour, still in great form. This album also proves that he still has it after 40 plus years. Matt Johnson, also known as The. Ensoulment is the name of the album. At number 8 is a career-defining album. This band has been making music. There are only 2 of them, but they've been making music for the past 40 years. And the fact that they released this year probably one of, if not the best album of their career, 40 years into their activity, is for me astounding. I love this album. It totally blew me away that it was so good that these artists could add so much more to what already is an amazing discography. I'm a fan. The Pet Shop Boys, Nonetheless, is the name of their album. I lost count what number album this is. They are produced on this album by James Ford. The production on here is flawless. James Ford produced last year's album by Blur called The Ballad of Darren, also in my top 3 albums, I think, of last year. Beautiful, lush orchestral arrangements on every single song, whether it is a somber song or a dance song. Sometimes just in the background is the orchestra, sometimes it's more up front. the dancey songs like Bullet for Narcissus, Dancing Star, I'm Only Dancing, and then you have the more somber songs, Loneliness, and I think two of the all-time best songs that the Pet Shop Boys have written are on this album. New London Boy and A New Bohemia, phenomenal. Very, almost confessional, I want to say. I think this is their love letter to the LGBT. A lot of memories of coming out, coming of age. Fantastic album. Blah, blah, blah. I can't stop talking about it. Listen to this album if you haven't. Nonetheless, Pet Shop Boys. At number 7, we have the debut album of the year, in my opinion, from the best new band in the last 5 years. If you watch my channel, you probably know already who I'm talking about. I've made 2 videos about their only 2 releases. First, an EP that came out at the beginning of the year, and then their full-length album, which was released in August. The name of the band is Bridget Calls Me Baby, and the name of the album is The Future Is Our Way Out. Lead singer and main songwriter of the band is Wes Levens or Levens. I'm not really entirely sure how you pronounce his last name. Doesn't matter because he is one of the most beautiful voices in the last 10 or 15 years. Amazing vocalist. What do they sound like? If you don't know yet, take the Smiths or the Strokes and you add the voice of, or the vocal stylings of Roy Orbison, and you have Bridget Calls Me Baby. I can't say any better things about them. I've made 2 videos. Go watch those 2 videos. I've talked at length about them. I said it when it came out. It was in my top 10. It's still there. At number 7, The Future Is Our Way Out, Bridget Calls Me Baby. At number 6 is an emotionally draining album. Every time I listen to it, I need to take a break before I can listen to anything else. It almost wipes me out. That's how rapturing it is for me when I listen to it. It's an experience listening to the music of Nick Cave. And this year he released Wild God. For those of you who are familiar with the music of Nick Cave, it's dark, but it's also very uplifting for me. This album has a lot of gospel vocals, background vocals. Above all, his singing. Sometimes his baritone is a crooning type of singing. Sometimes it's a preaching type of singing. Beautiful. His lyrics always infused with religious themes or spirituality. And this is an album that reflects him recovering from the loss of his son, Arthur, but it shows it in a way where now the feeling that I get is he has hope that there can be joy, that life can still bring him. There's still light that he can look forward to. So that's why, for me, when I listen to it, I call it an emotionally draining album. Beautiful string arrangements. His band is at the top of their game. Warren Ellis is it's called his musical director, does a phenomenal job. And there's one song that really is more confessional or more emotionally touching than the others, and that would be his tribute to his friend, maybe ex-lover, not really quite sure what relationship there was between them. I think they were also lovers. She passed away a few years ago. Another beautiful soul, Anita Lane, and it's almost a eulogy to her, and it's called Oh Wow, How Wonderful She Is. The whole album is wonderful. Wild God, Nick Cave. At number 5 is an album that for the longest time, for the majority of the year, for me, was in the top 3 until the albums, 2 of the spots that occupy the first 3 spots actually were released only in November. So at the very end of the year, the tail end of the year, she got bumped down to number 5. I'm talking about Billie Eilish, her album Hit Me Hard and Soft, the album that I've listened to the most this year. I've played her at the gym, in the subway, on my commute, at home, many, many times, driving around in the car. I love this album. I think it is her best album to date. It combines the best elements of her first groundbreaking album and her second, which for me wasn't as good as the first album. On this album, the level of maturity in her songwriting with her brother Phineas is really off the charts. Her voice, many people don't appreciate her vocal abilities. She's not known to be a belter. She does in a couple instances on 2 tracks of this album, but only recently at Black Friday Record Store Day, she released the isolated vocals version of this album, and I think it was because she wanted to highlight all of the vocal layering that was involved in the production of this album. I can't say any more about this album other than the songs on here are like, there are 3 songs in a row that are fantastic. Birds of a Feather, Wildflower, The Greatest. I love this album. Billie Eilish, Hit Me Hard and Soft at number 5. It took this band 16 years to release a new studio album. Coming in at number 4 is the new album by The Cure, Songs of a Lost World. They teased us for the last 3 years that a new album was coming, and it finally dropped in November. Probably one of the best albums of their career. Sonically very similar to Disintegration, and is up there in terms of importance in their discography. The grandeur, the slow-moving nature of the structure of the music, these long intros before the lyrics even and the vocals even come in. Again, recurring themes of death, growing old. It was heavily inspired in terms of like lyrical content from the death of Robert Smith's brother. Robert Smith has promised us that there are 2 more albums that are coming very shortly. Probably the next one in 2025. It's almost completed. It'll be hard to follow this one. Songs of the Lost World, again, one of their finest moments. I think they surprised everyone after 413 Dream, which was a good album. Nowhere close to Songs of a Lost World. The Cure at number 4. And here we are at my favorite 3 albums of 2024. I have to say 2024 produced so much great music. I had a hard time coming up or narrowing it down to 20 albums, 10, and then these top 3 albums for me, they're all interchangeably at number 1 or 2 or 3 because I love them all. They're all 5-star albums in my book. And the ranking of 1, 2, and 3 only came because of how I personally connected with them. But I love them all 3. So, and 2 of these were actually released only in November. So, at number 3, one of my favorite artists of the last maybe 10 years. His name is Josh Tillman, and he goes by Father John Misty. Hope I get the name of this album right. It's Mahashmashana, which in Sanskrit means great cremation ground. And it comes with so many cool things added. There's a poster, which I'll show you. I never got around to talking about this album before. So there's a poster, 2-sided poster actually. Then there are some other inserts, picture sleeves. There is a print that came at least with my edition. And Also another signed art print. So a lot of goodies on this album, but what matters the most is the music. And the opening track is a 9-minute track. It's a orchestral wall of sound. There are so many instruments. It is a full-on orchestra. It's worth the purchase of this album alone. She Cleans Up, another song on here, switches gears totally, and it's like a glam funk strut. Josh Tillman and the Accidental Dose, other people have said it, I'll repeat it again, has these string arrangements on them that are very reminiscent of Serge Gainsbourg, or I think they're taking from Debussy. I could be mistaken, maybe someone will correct me, but it's maybe a loop or a style of string arrangement that is very recurrent in pop music as well. And the second to last track, I Guess Time Just Makes Fun of Us All, is probably one of my favorite songs. It combines almost a disco stomp reminiscent of the Bee Gees' Stayin' Alive and the storytelling of Bob Dylan. This is a phenomenal album. At one point, it was my favorite album for about a week or so when it came out. It doesn't matter if it's 3 or 2 or 1. Listen to this album, Mahash Mashana, at number 3 by Father John Misty. At number 2, an album that I talked about when it came out. I think it was early in the summer, and I remember mentioning that this is an album that probably I'll appreciate even more, even though I loved it when it came out, that I would appreciate more once autumn and winter rolls around, and I started re-listening to this album around the fall, and I was right. It takes on a whole different mood when you listen to it in not sunny and hot weather. It's a more dark and intimate and heartwarming record, I want to say, when I listen to it. So the cold weather, the fall, the rain kind of adds, that mood adds to the beauty of this album. That's just my personal take. I guess you're wondering what it is, so let me just tell you. Beth Gibbons, Lives Outgrown. Beth Gibbons is the lead singer of Portishead. If you follow my channel, you know how much I love Portishead. This album, this solo album, was 10 years in the making. Here we are again with James Ford, the producer that I mentioned earlier when I talked about Pet Shop Boys. He also produces this album, along with contributions from Lee Harris, a drummer, percussionist from Talk Talk. Beth Gibbons, her interpretation, her vocal delivery is always one of sorrow, misery, but there's a lot of hope in this record. She talks about what influenced her, what infused the making of this album, and of the themes of loss, grief, menopause. She's getting older. It's very, there are strings throughout the album, very intimate. Sometimes I want to say this is emotionally draining to listen to. I need a break after I listen to this album. Beautiful, Beth Gibbons, and number 2, Lives Outgrown. And here we are at number 1. This album was released at the tail end of 2024, I believe in November, second week of November. And I was looking forward to it, but I was not expecting it to be so good. I was not expecting it to rise above all the other 20 plus albums that I talked about and become my album of the year. So my favorite album of 2024 is Kim Deal, Nobody Loves You More. Kim Deal, originally bass player of the Pixies, then founding member with her sister Kelly of the Breeders. She also had a side project, The Amps, but this is her first proper solo album. Many years in the making. It is stylistically varied. The opening track is almost a bossa nova with a brass arrangement that I was not expecting. Then she has some indie rock moments, which I was expecting, in songs like Crystal Breath, Disobedience, Big Ben Beat. The album is produced by Steve Albini, probably one of the last albums he produced before his passing. This passed earlier in the year, I believe, and I believe the album is also dedicated to Steve Albini, or there's a special thank you to him. The album deals with pain, loss, but also hope. It alternates moments, sad moments, with upbeat moments, like in Coast, where with a marching band, she is reminiscing of childhood memories of going to the beach for the summer. And my favorite song on the album is probably one of the most emotionally draining when I listen to it. And reading interviews about the album with Kim Deal, she talks about the origin of the song and the song title. While she was putting together or writing songs for this leading up to this album, she was also taking care of her mother, who suffered from dementia. And one day her mother turned to her in her final days or weeks and said, "Are you mine? Are you my baby?" And that is the title of my favorite song on the album. It is beautiful, probably one of my favorite songs of the year from my favorite album of 2024. Kim Deal, Nobody Loves You More. So that is it. That wraps it up for my favorite albums of 2024. I hope you followed me up till now. Thank you so much if you did. Just another reminder, I do it every time. Please remember to subscribe. It helps the channel get more visibility. It doesn't cost you anything. It's free. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you didn't. More importantly, I'd like to hear from you if you liked the albums, the same albums that I liked. If there are other albums that I did not talk about, please mention them in the comments. I love to hear about things that I may have missed, and I'm sure I have missed quite a few albums in 2024. Once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.